And I'm back. So I've got this filled up to 6 gallons now. The next thing that we're supposed to do is just to draw a sample up and use our hydrometer to test to make sure the specific gravity is where it should be. So this is a hydrometer. What it's really measuring is the density of your juice. So the more sugars and whatever else that you have in there, the higher this little thing will float in the wine as it measures the density. So we can do this in a little, almost like a graduated cylinder that this thing floats in. But at this point, since I have this open, I can just let it float in the wine itself. And what I'm looking for is a reading between 1.08 and 1.1, and I have that. So we are good to go to the next step. One of the things that's measuring also is sugar, of course, because that's dissolved in there, and the more sugar you've got, then theoretically the more alcohol you will have. Step number 5 in this process, if your kit contains oak or elderflowers, we'll put those in now, and we do in fact have oak. So we will add the oak flowers. It really just looks like sawdust at this point. Seems like we're ruining it, I know, but this is the alternative to putting it in an oak barrel. We just add these oak chips. Smells really good. So we put that in. Sprinkle them to the primary. Add both. Stir them under the surface. Break out the spoon again. And I'm just following this kit as it reads. If you're more experienced at making wine, then you'll probably deviate. So probably also what I would have done here if I wasn't making this video and kind of doing it as the kit, or as I would like to. Because I've ordered juice from Chile before that was Cabernet juice, and then I kind of did my own thing to it. I fermented it, and then I added oak later for a few days to get the oakiness in it, not at the same time that I've got in the primary. So this is considered our primary fermenter, since this is where most of our really active fermentation process will occur. And then after this, we're going to put it into our secondary, where kind of the slower, more long, kind of drawn out fermentation occurs. But stir this oak in under the surface. And eventually all those oak chips and dust will saturate and sink to the bottom, and then we'll just siphon off the top. Added our oak. Stir under the surface. Ensure the temperature of the juice is between 65 to 75 degrees Fahrenheit. This juice has been in the house for a while now. It was in a store before it came here. I added some warm water to it, but it's room temperature. If you want to measure the temperature of it at this point, you certainly could. Mine is definitely between that 65 and 75 range, so I don't have anything to worry about there. Open the packet of yeast, sprinkle onto the surface, do not stir. So a lot of times, and again the yeast comes with the kit, a lot of times on the back of the yeast it'll tell you to let it sit in water for a while, or maybe even a sugar water solution for a while. This one says between 100 and 105 degrees. That's just kind of to let it hydrate and start to ferment a little bit, start to multiply. I've never done that. What I always do is just as this says. I open the pack, all the yeast on top. And what it's going to do is it's going to hydrate, and then it's going to start to fall to the bottom, and then it's going to start to consume the sugars, undergo alcohol fermentation, produce some CO2, and produce the alcohol that we're really after, and a nice wine, of course. And now, once it starts to ferment, we can call this wine. Up until now, it's been juice, but once it starts to ferment, we can call it wine. Put the yeast in, cover the primary, place it somewhere between 65 and 75 degrees. My house is about 72, and fermentation should start in 24 to 48 hours, and then we'll go on to the second step in the process. So it's really just that easy. There's not much room for mistake here. I'll put the lid on. Now this is really going to start to ferment quite heavily. You don't want anything to enter into the container while it's fermenting. So there's two ways to stop that from happening. One, you can use an airlock like this. This bucket lid happens to have a hole in the top, so I can put this on, snap it down, and put the airlock in. This fills up with a little bit of water or alcohol or whatever you put in here. And that keeps, air can come out, but nothing can go back in to the wine. When you've got something primary like this and you've got so much volume, then a lot of times these little things aren't good enough to kind of stay up with the fermentation that's going on. So the other thing that you can do is have a container. I'll fill this about 3/4 or about a third of the way, I should say, full of sanitizer. And then what I've got in here is some tubing. What I'll do is I'll take one end of the tubing and put it in here, and then I'll take the other end and put it in the top of this bucket. And so now any CO2 that leaves travels up through this tube, it bubbles up through this bucket, and nothing can get back in. We probably will get some bubbles, some foaming to actually come up into this tube, and that's fine. When you get that foaming to occur and all you've got is this little airlock at the top, then it doesn't work so well and you end up with quite the mess. So that's where I'll be next. 12 to 48 hours we should see some pretty rapid fermentation. And then in 5 to 7 days I'll check the specific gravity again, and that's where we'll start the next video. So pretty simple. It's a pretty easy way to make some really good wine. I'll have about 30 bottles when I'm all said and done with this, and really, really good stuff. So maybe subscribe to my channel if you're interested in making wines.